With the exception of the Catholic University, there is not a single white college in the national capital to which colored people are admitted. A few years ago, the Columbian Law School admitted colored students, but in deference to the Southern white students, the authorities have decided to exclude them altogether. Some time ago, a young woman answered an advertisement which appeared in the Washington newspaper, which called for the services of a skilled stenographer and expert typewriter. The applicants were requested to send specimens of their work and answer certain questions concerning their experiences and their speed before they called in person. In reply to her application, the young colored woman received a letter from the firm stating that her references and experiences were the most satisfactory that had been sent, and requesting her to call. And when she presented herself, there was some doubt in the mind of the man to whom she was directed concerning her racial pedigree. So he asked her point blank whether she was colored or white. When she confessed the truth, the merchant expressed deep regret that he could not avail himself of the services of so competent a person, but frankly admitted that employing a colored woman in his establishment in any except menial position was simply out of the question. Although white and colored teachers are under the same board of education, and the system of the children of both races is said to be uniform, prejudice in the public schools is manifested in a variety of ways. From 1870 to 1900, there was a colored superintendent at the head of the colored schools. During all that time, the directors of cooking, sewing, physical culture, manual labor, music, art were colored. 6 years ago, change was marked. The colored superintendents and the directorships, without a single exception, were taken from the colored teachers and given to whites. Now, no matter how competent or superior the colored teachers in our public systems may be, they know they can never rise to the heights of directorship, can never hope to be anything more than an assistant, unless the present regime radically change. But strenuous efforts are being made to run Jim Crow cars in the national capital. Representative Heflin of Alabama, who introduced a bill providing for Jim Crow street cars in the District of Columbia last winter, has just received a letter from the president of East Brooklyn Citizens Association. Quote, endorsing the movement for separate streetcars and sincerely hoping that you will be successful in getting this enacted into law as soon as possible. End quote. The colored laborer's path to a decent livelihood is by no means smooth. But even when they are allowed to join the unions, they frequently derive little benefit owing to certain tricks of the trade. When word passes around that help is needed and colored laborers arrive, they are often told by union officers that they have already secured all the men they needed because the places are reserved for white men. And colored men must remain idle unless the supply of white men is too small. And so I might go on, citing instance after instance to show the variety of ways in which our people are sacrificed on the altar of prejudice in the capital of the United States, and how almost insurmountable are the obstacles which block his path to success. It is impossible for any white person in the United States, no matter how sympathetic or broad, to realize what life would mean to him if his incentive to effort was suddenly snatched. To the lack of incentive to effort, which is the awful shadow which we live, may be traced to the wreck and ruin of scores of colored youth. And surely nowhere in the world do oppression and persecution based solely on the color of skin appear more hateful and hideous than in the capital of the United States. Because the chasm between the principles upon which this government was founded, and which it still professes to believe, and those which are daily practiced under the protection of the flag, they yawn so wide and deep.
Cool, okay. All right, so that was amazing. Thank you, QE1. Next, we have the House of Ronald Reagan, and on deck we'll have the House of Margaret Thatcher.
Ladies and gentlemen, presidents, prime ministers, and premiers, delegates to the United Nations, thank you for being here. Today, I have the great pleasure of welcoming the Prime Minister of Canada, His Excellency Justin Trudeau. Prime Minister Trudeau has been the leader of the Government of Canada since 2015. His government has sought to establish progressive policies and values and seek harmony for all Canadians. Today, Mr. Trudeau will speak to us regarding his government's efforts to reconcile with Canada's history of local Indigenous population. His comments can help all our nations consider how we can address the past and move toward a more united future. Please welcome to the second General Assembly of the United Nations, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Thank you, and good afternoon. Mr. President, fellow delegates, and friends. People, peace, a good quality of life, and caring for our environment. Fairness for people no matter where they live. These things that matter deeply to Canadians. We have, throughout our history, worked hard to secure them, at home and around the world. I'd like to share with you today some of the difficult lessons that Canada has learned along the way. Canada is not a wonderland, free of the challenges we face. We face many of the same challenges that you do. Canada remains a work in progress. I want to tell you about the Canadian experience because for all the mistakes we've made, we remain hopeful that we can do better and be better and treat each other with dignity and the respect that is the birthright of every human being. I want to tell you our story because I know that the challenges we have faced and continue to face are not unique in the world, and neither are the solutions. It's an approach that doesn't just serve domestic needs, but that makes the world a better, more peaceful, more prosperous place for all. This year, in 2017, Canada celebrated 150th anniversary of Confederation, our 150th birthday, if you will. But Canada is much older than that. It has been home to the descendants of settlers and immigrants for hundreds of years, and Indigenous people for millennia. We are a country built on different cultures, different religions, different languages, all coming together. That diversity has become our great strength. But that is not and has not always been true for everyone who shares our land. Canada is built on the ancestral land of Indigenous peoples, but regrettably, it's also a country that came into being without the meaningful participation of those who were there first. And even where treaties have been formed to provide a foundation for proper relations, they have not been fully honored or implemented. For First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples in Canada, those early colonial relationships were not about strength through diversity or celebration of our differences. For Indigenous peoples in Canada, the experience was mostly one of humiliation, neglect, and abuse. A government that didn't respect their traditions and strengths, or their distinct governments and laws, but instead denied and undermined their rights and dignity, that sought to overwrite their distinct histories, to eradicate their distinct languages and cultures, and to impose colonial traditions and ways of life. In doing so, we rejected the very notion that whole generations of Indigenous peoples have the right to define for themselves what a decent life may be. And we robbed Canada of the contributions these generations would have made to growing our country. The failure of successive Canadian governments to respect the rights of Indigenous peoples in Canada is our greatest shame. For many Indigenous peoples, this lack of respect for their rights persists to this day. There are today children living on reserve in Canada who cannot safely drink or bathe in or even play in the water that comes out of their taps. There are Indigenous parents who say goodnight to their children and have to cross their fingers in the hopes that their kids won't run away or take their own lives during the night. For far too many Indigenous women, life in Canada includes threats of violence so frequent and severe that Amnesty International has called it a human rights crisis. That is the legacy of colonialism in Canada. The good news is that Canadians get at it. They see the inequities. They're fed up with the excuses. And that impatience gives us a rare and precious opportunity to act. We now have before us an opportunity to deliver true, meaningful, and lasting reconciliation between Canada and First Nations, the Métis Nation, and Inuit peoples. And as we embark upon that process of reconciliation, we are guided by the minimum standards adopted here in this chamber 10 years ago this month. I know that Canada has a complicated history with the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. We actively campaigned and voted against it. And then we endorsed it in the most half-hearted way possible, calling it an aspirational document. The Declaration is not an aspirational document. It means much more than that to the Indigenous peoples and others who worked so hard for so long to bring the Declaration to life. In the words of Canada's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, the Declaration provides, quote, the necessary principles, norms, and standards for reconciliation to flourish in the 21st century Canada. That's not an aspiration. That's a way forward. In partnership with Indigenous peoples, we're moving ahead with a thorough review of federal laws, policies, and operational practices to get our house in check. We are working closely with Indigenous peoples in Canada to better respond to their priorities, to better understand how they see and define self-determination, and to support the work of their nation building. In short, we have been working hard in partnerships with other orders of government and with Indigenous leaders in Canada to correct past injustices and bring about a better quality of life for Indigenous people in Canada. We know that no one can have a real and fair chance at success without the things that make success possible. Good health, strong communities, good, well-paying jobs, quality education, and safe and affordable places to live. Clearly, that includes Indigenous peoples too. We need women and girls to succeed because that's how we grow stronger economies and build stronger communities. That is why our government will be moving forward shortly with legislation to ensure equal pay for work of equal value. Sustainable development goals are as meaningful in Canada as they are everywhere else in the world, and we are committed to implementing them at home, while we also work with our international partners to achieve them around the world. The need for greater equality and decent work, those are real and persistent human needs. Ones we cannot afford to ignore, especially in our own countries. We are challenged, every one of us, to provide better opportunities for people, including Indigenous peoples. We are challenged by the fact that true equality is unconditional. Equality applies to every person, no matter their gender, or where they were born, or how they worship, or whom they choose to love. We are all in this together, and the relationships we build need to reflect this reality. In Canada, this means new relationships between the Government of Canada and Indigenous peoples. Relationships based on recognitions of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. There is no blueprint for this kind of change. There is no roadmap we can follow, but neither can we wait. The time has come to forge new paths together, to move beyond the limitations of old and outdated colonial structures, and to create in their place something new, something that respects the inherent right of Indigenous peoples to self-govern and to determine their own future. Indigenous peoples will decide how they wish to represent and organize themselves. Some may choose to engage with our government based on historic nations and treaties. Others will use different shared experiences as the basis for coming together. The choice is theirs. This is precisely what self-determination demands. Though the path is uncharted, I'm confident that we will reach a place of reconciliation, that we will get to a place as a country where nation to nation, government to government, Inuit-Crown relationships can be transformed. It's a future we all want, for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren. It's a future that Indigenous peoples in Canada and around the world deserve to share as full and equal partners. And it's a future we can build if we work together. Our efforts to build a better relationship with Indigenous peoples in Canada are not only about righting historical wrongs. They are about listening and learning and working together. The reconciliation we seek has lessons for us all. We can't build strong relationships if we refuse to have conversations. And we can't build a better world unless we work together, respect our differences, protect the vulnerable, and stand up for the things that matter most. As I said last year, we know it will be hard work, but I remain confident, for Canada's experience shows this to be true, that any challenge can be met if we meet it together. Merci beaucoup.
So we've gotten some questions about this today, but I just wanted to remind you all how to get credit for attending this event. If you are attending online, thank you for doing so. Our academics coordinator will send out a Google form with a couple of questions that are completely subjective, so no matter how you answer, as long as you fill out the form, you will be counted as attended. And for those of you who are attending in person, in a war room, or in the city room, check in with your liaison or with someone on the committee, meaning anyone in the green shirt, and we will get you checked in. And reminder, this is a two-part event, so if you attend the first 5 speeches, you get 1 credit. If you attend the second 5 speeches, you get a 2nd credit. So you can fulfill all your requirements, aside from the film comp, in 1 day, which is super. So with that, I would like to obviously thank you, House of Reagan, you guys were awesome. Next, we have the House of Margaret Thatcher, and on deck, we will have the House of Winston Churchill.
you who don't know me, my name is Sarah Palin, and I am so honored to be here in this beautiful and historic city in Columbia, South Carolina, introducing my friend, Governor Haley. This girl has been considered the underdog. She is a fighter and she is a winner. She stands up for what is right and she does it for you. She doesn't back down from a challenge. We gather here just 5 days after the tragic shooting that took place in North Charleston. Nikki Haley is here and ready to have those hard conversations that we cannot ignore. This state needs to band together and move forward. The events that took place were devastating. However, they sparked a needed conversation about race, symbolism, and unity. Today, we discuss the issue of the Confederate flag, its deeper meaning, and whether it should continue to fly atop the South Carolina Capitol building. To all the protesters, keep on doing what you're doing. My husband and son are here in their uniform, ready to protect your right to protest. Governor Haley truly cares about every single one of you. She respects your fundamental rights and wants the spears of reconciliation to echo through the nation, starting right here. She is a strong pro-life, pro-family, pro-Second Amendment, conservative reformer, your governor, Nikki Haley.
This has been a very difficult time for our state. We've stared evil in the eye and watched good, prayerful people killed in one of our most sacred places. We were hurt, broken, and needed to be healed. We were able to start that process, not by talking about issues that divide us, but by holding vigils, by hugging neighbors, by honoring those we lost and falling to our knees in prayer. Our state's grieving, but we're also coming together. The outpouring of love and support from all corners of people across this state and country has been amazing. Their expression of faith and forgiveness took our breath away. They have truly shown the world what South Carolina looks like at our best. The Mother Emanuel Church reopened its doors yesterday. Michael and I were there. We took our two little ones, Rena and Aylin. Our children saw what true faith looks like. They also saw that true hate can never triumph over true love. My children saw the heart and soul of South Carolina starting to mend. The country and the world have watched our strength and resilience over the last few days. We are strong people who love God, our families, and have deep faith. We believe in neighbors helping neighbors. We are a state that is held tight to traditions and continues to grow and change in ways that move us forward. In the last few months, the nation has probably watched our state go through another time of crisis when we dealt with the betrayal of one of our own in the tragic shooting of Walter Scott. South Carolina did not respond with rioting and violence like other places have. We responded by talking to each other, by putting ourselves in other people's shoes, and by finding common ground in the name of our state moving forward. The result, both Republicans and Democrats, black and white, came together and passed the first body camera bill in the country. And I stand in front of you, a minority female governor, twice elected by the state of South Carolina. Behind me stands my friend, Senator Tim Scott, elected by those same people, and one of just 2 African-American members in the United States Senate. On the matters of race, South Carolina has a tough history. We all know that. Many of us have seen it with our own lives. In the lives of our parents and our grandparents, we don't need reminders. In spite of last week's tragedy, we have come a long way since those days and have much to be proud of, but there's much more we can do. That brings me to the subject of the Confederate flag that flies in the State House grounds. For many people in this state, that flag stands for traditions that are noble, traditions of history, of heritage, of ancestry. At the same time, for many others in South Carolina, that flag is deeply offensive, a symbol of brutally oppressive past. As a state, we can survive, and indeed we can thrive, as we have done, while still being home to both of these viewpoints. We do not need to declare a winner or a loser here. We respect freedom of expression, and for those who wish to show the flag on the private property, no one will stand in your way. But the State House is different, and the events of this past week have called upon us to look at this in a different way. 15 years ago, after much contentious debate, South Carolina came together in a bipartisan way to move the flag atop the Capitol dome. Today, we are here in a moment of unity. In our state, without ill will, it is time to move the flag from the Capitol grounds. 150 years at the end of the Civil War, the time has come. But this moment, in which we can say that the flag, while an integral part of our past, does not represent the future of our great state. The murderer locked up in Charleston so that his actions would start a race war. We have an opportunity to show not only was he wrong, but just the opposite is happening. My hope is that by removing the symbol that divides us, we can move forward as a state in harmony, and we can honor the 9 blessed souls who are now in heaven. I've indicated to the House and the Senate that if they do not take measures to ensure this debate takes place this summer, I will use that authority for the purpose of the legislature removing the flag from the state grounds. That will take place in the coming weeks after the regular session and the veto session have been completed. There will be time for discussion and debate, but the time for action is coming soon. I want to make 2 things very clear. First, this is South Carolina State House. It is South Carolina's historic moment, and this will be South Carolina's decision. To those outside of our state, the flag may be nothing more than a symbol of the worst of America's past. That is not what it is to many South Carolinians. The State House belongs to all of us. Their voices will be heard, and their role in this debate will be respected. We have made incredible progress in South Carolina on racial issues, yes, but on so many others. The 21st century belongs to us because we have chosen to seize what's in front of us, to do what is right and do it together. I have every faith this will be no different. It is what we do in South Carolina. It is who we are. Second, I understand that what I said here today may generate a lot of interest. What I ask is that the focus still remains on the 9 victims of this horrible tragedy. Their families, the Mother Emanuel family, the AME Church family, the South Carolina family. We all deserve time to grieve and remember and to heal. We will take it, and I ask that you respect it. We know that bringing down the Confederate flag will not bring back those 9 kind souls that were taken from us, nor will it hide the hate and bigotry that drove the monster through the doors of Mother Emanuel that night. Some divisions are bigger than a flag. The evil we saw last Wednesday comes from a place much deeper, much darker. But we are not going to allow this symbol to divide us any longer. The fact that people are choosing to use it as a sign of hate is something we cannot stand. The fact that it causes so many pain to so many is enough for us to move from Capitol grounds. It is, after all, a Capitol that belongs to all of us. 4th of July is just around the corner. Soon we will once again celebrate the birth of our nation and of our freedoms. It will be fitting that our state capitol will soon fly the flags of our country and our state, and no others. God bless. God bless the people of the state of South Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you, House of Thatcher. That was awesome. Just a couple of logistical reminders. Number 1, for those of you who are speaking and performing today, please don't change out of your costumes if you haven't already. You want to take a picture when this is all over. Second, for those of you who are attending, I figure out how to phrase this and make it make sense. When this when this round ends, please, if you're attending in person in the city room, if you plan to attend the second session, please return to your war room to see if there's any space there from anyone who left, rather than staying in this spot. This is we have room for more overflow if that's needed in here. Okay, great. So next we have the House of Winston Churchill, who will be performing, and then we will have our final speaker, the House of Clara Barton on deck. Thank you.
I, Percy Utar, am in front of the Pretoria Supreme Court today as the prosecutor in the case of against Nelson Mandela and his men, who should be put in prison for the remainder of their lives for their continuous actions, which go completely against this country's ideology, for which white people strongly believe in and strongly stand for. These black men call themselves freedom fighters, led by Mr. Mandela, are destroying our Constitution on which this country is built upon. Riots, protesting, and violence do not belong in this country. We believe that apartheid is and always will be the best way forward for this country. Democracy does not belong here, and its ideology will never succeed in this country. These men believe that their population, who have no proper education in neither politics nor economics, should rule this country and have a say in our Constitution. There is a reason why South African cities such as Cape Town and Pretoria and Johannesburg are known to be the most powerful and prosperous cities in Africa. There is a reason why the rest of the world knows about this country, and our economy is one to be respected. Nelson Mandela will be speaking directly to you in just a moment. The case he will make for you is one of reconciliation, with describing his actions and those of his freedom fighters were violent, but made with good intentions, in which they had a vision of this country where everyone has equal freedom. Violence and rioting should never be the avenue in which people take in order to seek these changes. And so the Supreme Court will have a choice to either accept his supposed message of reconciliation or to support the interests of South Africa by rejecting the path that they have chosen. And now, Mr. Nelson Mandela, I give you the floor to make your case.
My lord, I am the first accused. I am convicted prisoner serving 5 years for inciting people to go on strike. In the statement which I'm about to make, I shall correct certain false impressions which have been created by state witnesses, amongst other things, and I will demonstrate certain acts referred to in the evidence which were not and could not have been committed by Umkhonto. I will also deal with the relationship between the African National Congress and which the party, which I personally have played in affairs with, have dealt with in the past few years. I shall deal also with the Communist Party, in which many people have accused me of being the leader of. And in order to explain these matters properly, I'll have to explain what Umkhonto have set out to achieve and what methods he prescribed for the achievement of these objects and why these methods were chosen. I'll also have to explain how I became involved in the activities of these organizations. I have done whatever I did, both as an individual and as a leader of my people, because of my experience in South Africa and my own proudly felt African background, and not because of what any outsider might have said. I and the others who started the organization did so for two reasons. Firstly, we believe that as a result of the government policy, violence by the African people had become inevitable, and that unless responsible leadership was given to canalize and control the feelings of our people, there would be outbreaks of terrorism, which would produce an intensity of bitterness and hostility between the various races of our country, which would produce violence even worse than of war. Secondly, we felt that with doing sabotage, there would be no way open to the African people to succeed in their struggle against the principle of white supremacy. All lawful modes of expressing opposition to this principle have been closed by legislation, and we were placed in a position in which we had to either accept a permanent state of inferiority or to defy the government, and we chose to defy the government. We believe that South Africa belonged to all the people who lived in it, and not to one group, be it black or white. We do not want an interracial war and try to avoid it to the last minute. We felt that the country was drifting towards a civil war in which blacks and whites would fight each other. We view the situation with alarm, and civil war would mean the destruction of what the ANC stood for. As if with civil war, racial peace would be more difficult than ever to achieve. The avoidance of civil war had dominated our thinking for many years, but when we decided to adopt sabotage as part of our policy, we realized that we might one day have to face the prospect of such a war. We required a plan which was flexible and which permitted us to act in accordance with the needs of the times. The plan had to be one which recognized civil war as the last resort. We do not want to be committed to civil war, but we wanted to be ready if it became inevitable. My Lord, I wish to now turn to my own position. I have denied that I am not a communist. And I think in the circumstances, I am obliged to state exactly what my political beliefs are in order to explain what my position in the council was, and what made my attitude towards the use of forces. I have always regarded myself in the first place as an African patriot. Today, I am attracted by the idea of a classless society, an attraction which springs in part from Marxist readings and in part from my admiration of the structure and organization of early African societies in this country. The land then, which the main means of production belonged to the tribe. There was no rich or poor, and there was no exploitation. South Africa is the richest country in Africa, and could be one of the richest countries in the world. The whites enjoy what may well be the highest standard of living in the world, whilst Africans live in poverty and misery. 40% of the Africans live in hopelessly overcrowded and in some cases drought-stricken reserves, where soil erosion and the overworking of the soil makes it impossible for them to live properly off the land. 30% are laborers, labor attendants, and squatters on white farms and work and live under conditions similar to those of the serfs of the Middle Ages. The other 30% live in towns where they have developed economic and social habits which bring them closer in many respects to white standards. Yet most Africans, even in this group, are impoverished by low income and the high cost of living. Poverty goes hand in hand with malnutrition and disease. The incidence of malnutrition and diseases is very high amongst Africans. Tuberculosis, pellagra, kwashiorkor, gastronitis, and scurvy bring death and destruction to health. The incidence of infant mortality is one of the highest in the world. The complaint of Africans, however, is not that we are poor and whites are rich, but that the laws which are made by the whites are designed to preserve this situation. There are two ways to break out of this type of poverty. The first is by formal education, and the second is by worker acquiring a greater skill, and by this greater skill, earn a higher wage. As far as the Africans are concerned, both these avenues of advancements are deliberately curtailed by legislation. I ask the court to remember that the present government has always sought to hamper Africans in their search for education. There is compulsory education for all white children at virtually no cost to their parents, be they rich or poor. Similar facilities are not provided for the African children, though there are some who receive such assistance. Although these children generally have to pay way more for schooling than the white children. The government often answers its critics by saying that Africans in South Africa are way better off than the Africans in other countries. Our complaint is not that we are poor by comparison with people in other countries on our continent, but that we are poor by comparison with white people in our own country, and that we are prevented by legislation from altering this imbalance. The lack of human dignity experienced by Africans is a direct result of the policy of white supremacy. White supremacy implies black inferiority. Legislation designed to preserve white supremacy entrenches this notion. Menial tasks in South Africa are invariably performed by Africans. When anything has to be carried or cleaned by the white man, you'll seek an ordinary black man sitting around in the corner, even if that black man does not work for him, in order to do the dirty labor. Because of this sort of attitude, whites tend to regard Africans as a separate breed. They do not look upon them as people with families of their own. They do not realize that we have emotions, that we fall in love like they do, that we have families just like they do. We have wives, children, and that we want to make money in order to support our families and to have food on the table every evening and send our children to school. I doubt whether there's a single African male in South Africa who has not had at some stage in their life a brush off with the police. Hundreds and thousands of Africans are thrown into jail each year under past laws. Even worse than this is the fact that past laws keep husbands and wives apart and lead to breakdown of family life. Above all, we want equal political rights, because without them, our disabilities will be permanent. I know this sounds revolutionary to the whites in this country, because the majority of voters will be Africans. This makes the white man fear democracy. Political divisions based on color is entirely artificial, and when it disappears, so will the domination of one color group by another. Our struggle is truly a national one. It is a struggle of the African people, inspired by our own suffering and our own experience. It is a struggle for the right to live. During my lifetime, I have dedicated my life to the struggle of the African people. I have fought against white supremacy, and I have fought against black supremacy. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunity. It is an ideal for which I hope to live for and see realized. But, my Lord, if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I'm prepared to die for. Thank you.
Thank you, House of Churchill. That was great. Okay, really quick, I just want to thank everyone who has performed. You guys have been amazing. And thank our judges, Dr. Griffith, Megan Lassiter, and Britton Ward. You guys have been amazing. And they're kind enough to judge for us again next round. So, all right, I think that's it. After this speech, we're going to take a 30-minute break. We're going to reconvene at 6:30 for the next round of speeches, to give you guys time to get your credit, to return to your war room, see if there are any empty seats available, and get back here if you do need to. So we're gonna have our final speech now, which is by the House of Senator Barton. Thank you.
Your Majesty, Your Royal Highness, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Norwegian Nobel Committee has awarded the Peace Prize for 1979 to Mother Teresa. The year 1979 has not been a year of peace. Disputes and conflicts between nations, peoples, and ideologies have been conducted with all the accompanying extremes of inhumanity and cruelty. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has considered it right and appropriate, precisely in the year, in their choice of Mother Teresa. The committee has awarded the prize to champions of equality and fraternity among peoples of different race in every country and in every part of the world. In awarding the Nobel Peace Prize of 1979 to Mother Teresa, the committee has posed a focal question that we encounter along all these paths. Can any political, social, or intellectual feat of engineering on the international or on the national plane, however effective and rational, however idealistic, and principle its protagonist may be. Give us anything but a house built on a foundation of sand, unless the spirit of Mother Teresa inspires the builders and takes its dwelling in their building. Mother Teresa had a glimpse of the poverty and the squalor of the slums, of sick people who remained unattended, of lonely men and women lying to die on the pavements, of the thousands of orphan children wandering around with no one to care for them. The hallmark of her work has been respect for the individual and the individual's worth and dignity. The loneliest and the most wretched, the dying destitute, the abandoned lepers, have been received by her and her sisters with warm compassion, devoid of condescension, based on this revere for Christ in man. In 1972, the President of the Republic of India had these words to say about her. Mother Teresa is one of those liberated souls who have transcended all barriers presented by race, religion, and nationality. In our present-day troubled world, incessantly plagued by conflict and hatred, the life that is lived and the work that is carried out by people like Mother Teresa bring new hope for the future of mankind. With her message, she is able to reach through to something in it, in every humankind, for no other purpose than to create a potential, a seed for good. If this were not the case, the world would be deprived of hope, and work for peace would have little meaning. In our endeavors on the national, as on the international level, we have a lesson to learn from her work for individuals in distress. On the international level, our efforts can only serve the cause of peace if they do not offend the self-respect of the poor nations. All aid given by the rich countries must be given in the spirit of Mother Teresa. I now have the pleasure to invite the Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 1979 to come forward to give us her lecture.
Let us all together thank God for this beautiful occasion where we can all together proclaim the joy of spreading peace, the joy of loving one another, and the joy acknowledging that the poorest of the poor are our brothers and sisters. As we have gathered here to thank God for this gift of peace, I have given you all the prayer for peace that Saint Francis of Assisi prayed many years ago. Lord, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love. That where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness. That where there is discord, I may bring harmony. That where there is error, I may bring truth. That where there is doubt, I may bring faith. Where there is despair, I may bring hope. That where there are shadows, I may bring light. And where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by forgetting self that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. God loved the world so much that he gave his son, and he gave him to a virgin, the Blessed Virgin Mary, and she the moment he came in her life, went in haste to give him to others. And what did she do then? She did the work of the handmaid, just so. Just spread that joy of loving through service. And Jesus Christ loved you and he loved me. And he gave his life for us. And as if that was not enough for him, he kept on saying, love as I have loved you, as I love you now. And how do we have to love? To love in the giving. For he gave his life for us. And he keeps on giving, and he keeps on giving right here, everywhere, in our own lives and in the lives of others. It was not enough for him to just die for us. He wanted that we love one another, that we see him in each other. That's why he said, "Blessed are the clean of heart, for they shall see God." And to make sure we understand what he means, he said that at the hour of death, we are going to be judged on what we have been to the poor, to the hungry, the naked, the homeless. And he makes himself that hungry one, that naked one, that homeless one. And he says, whatever you did to the least of my brethren, you did it to me. It is so beautiful for us to become holy through this love. For holiness is not a luxury of the few. It is a simple duty for each of us. And through this love, we become holy. Through this love for one another, and today, when I have received this award, I do not deserve it. I personally am most unworthy, but I am grateful and very happy to receive it in the name of the hungry, of the naked, of the homeless and crippled, of the blind, of the leprous, of all those people who feel unwanted, unloved, uncared, thrown away of the society, people who have become a burden to society and are ashamed by everybody. In their name, I accept this award. And I am sure this award is going to bring an understanding, love between the rich and the poor. And this is what Jesus has insisted so much. That is why Jesus came to earth to proclaim the good news to the poor. And through this award, and through all of us gathered here together, we are wanting to proclaim the good news to the poor, that God loves them and we love them, and that they are somebody to us, that they too have been created by the same loving hand of God to love and to be loved. One evening, a gentleman came to our house and said, there is a Hindu family and the 8 children have not eaten for a long time. Do something for them. And I took rice and I went immediately. And there was this mother whose little one's faces shining eyes from sheer hunger. She took the rice from my hand. She divided it into 2 and she went out. When she came back, I asked her, where did you go? What did you do? And one answer she gave me, they are hungry also. She knew that the next door neighbor, a Muslim family, was hungry. What surprised me most was not that she gave the rice, but what surprised me most was that In her suffering, in her own hunger, she knew that someone else was hungry, and she had the courage to share the love. And this is what I mean. I want you to love the poor and never turn your back to the poor. For in turning your back to the poor, you are turning it to Christ. For he had made himself the hungry one, the naked one, the homeless one, so that you and I have an opportunity to love him. Because where is God? How can we love God? It is not enough to say to my God, I love you, but my God, I love you here. I can enjoy this, but I give it up. If I stay here the whole day and whole night, you would be surprised of the beautiful things that people do to share the joy of living. And so, my prayer for you is that truth will bring prayer in our homes. And from the fruit of prayer will be that we believe that in the poor, it is Christ. And we will really believe, and we will begin to love. And we will love naturally. We will try to do something. First in our own home, next door neighbor, in our country we live, in the whole world. God bless you.
Thank you again for being here. Thank you everyone who spoke. We're actually going to reconvene at 6:40 instead of 6:30 to give you guys proper time to get back to your war room, get back to your duty to all of that. So, all right, we'll see you then. Thank you so much.